In this lesson, I will discuss a few of the people who have helped develop the music genre known as rock and roll. I will also show you pictures of pioneers and give you examples of the song styles and recognize two of the people who were also active in the foundation of rock and roll. Oftentimes we don't know where we came from, where we're going, or even how we got here. I'm here today to give you just a brief look at what I like to call rock and roll, kind of a favorite subject of mine. I'm going to give you some of the influences that started the drive to change the American culture, or at least what I think is important, and show you that life was hard. Americans were turning to music to escape everyday life, and if we looked into any juke joints, any roadhouses, or even any speakeasies, you'll see that there was beverages to be had, and there was also what they called rhythm and blues singers. Life was tough. They sang about what was given to them during that day, how they had dealt with it. They often called it the blues. One of the first to influence rhythm and blues was Gertrude Pridgett, who was born in 1886 to a theatrical family that performed in entertainment type shows. She first appeared on stage in 1900 singing and dancing in a minstrel and vaudeville stage review. In 1902, she married the song and dance man William Paul Rainey. And from then on, she was known as Ma Rainey. The couple formed a song and dance act that included blues and popular songs. It was not until 1923 that Ma Rainey signed a recording contract with Paramount Studios. She was billed as the mother of the blues. She ended up recording over 100 songs between 1923 and 1928 on Paramount Records. During that time, she was accompanied by many noted jazz musicians such as Louis Armstrong, Tommy Ladner, Fletcher Henderson, and Coleman Hawkins. She continued working until 1935 and retired to Columbus, Georgia. Ma had been very smart with her money. She had managed to build and operate 2 theaters. She had also owned her own home in Columbus, Georgia. Ma Rainey died in 1939 of a heart attack. Let's take a listen to one of her songs. Bessie Smith was a hard, crude, and violent woman in the 1920s who had befriended Ma Rainey in the traveling roadshow that featured Ma Rainey's husband, Pa Rainey. She is most often remembered for her edition of the St. Louis Blues that featured Louis Armstrong. I mentioned these two ladies because if you look at the style of music that they sing, it's not that different from the music of, say, Janis Joplin or Mama Cass. Those type of songs that they had sang. It was the same feeling, the same style. You definitely felt something there. They say the definition of the blues, which was first coined by W.C. Handy, who was a black composer from the early 1900s. He said, the blues, its 12-bar bent note melody, the anthem of a race, bonding itself together with cries of shared self-victimization. Bad luck and trouble are always present in the blues, and always the result of others, pressing upon unfortunate and downtrodden poor souls, yearning to be free from life's troubles. Relentless rhythms repeat the chants of sorrow and the pity of lost souls many times over. This is the blues. Now let's take a listen to the St. Louis Blues, just a brief little snippet by Bessie Smith featuring Louis Armstrong. So how do we transition from the influence of rhythm and blues to what is now called rock and roll? Some call them crossover artists. Crossover artists are musicians and music that take their musical influences and mix them with new ideas and sounds, and oftentimes give birth to a new genre of music. The first records to crossover were by black vocal groups that signaled the beginning of the rock era. The first groups consisted of members who generally were 20 to 30 years old. The records were rooted in jazz and R&B and adult-oriented. The Dominoes and the Midnighters would be examples of this group. In 1951, the Dominoes created the song 60 Minute Man. These lyrics were scandalous in 1951, but by today's sounds, it seems so normal it just seems normal. Let's just put it that way. The chorus was specific. There'll be 15 minutes of kissing, then you'll holler, please don't stop, don't stop. There'll be 15 minutes of teasing, minutes of squeezing, and 15 minutes of blowing my top. Oh my goodness. Sometimes when we hear these songs that set the standard back in the day, we often forget that they're still playing the same thing. We're still hearing it. I mean, it's even worse now. 1954, rhythm and blues began to transition to a younger sound that would be called doo-wop to distinguish it from, say, rhythm and blues, which was an earlier sound. As vocal groups began more successful in crossing over, the songs became more melodic with younger lyrics and universal themes that often appealed to younger audiences and perceived as less threatening by their parents. The crossover floodgates opened wide in 1954. Anyone who says rock and roll is a passing fad or a flash in the pan trend along the road has rocks in the head, Dad. Alan Freed. Who was Alan Freed? Let's just take a little, I'll give you a picture of who Alan Freed is here. Elvis Presley was the first tangible rock and roll star, a white southerner who singing blues laced with country and country tinged with gospel. Presley brought together music from both sides of the color line. Presley performed this music with a natural hip-twisting sexuality that made him a teen idol and role model for generations of unflappable revolutionaries. Presley was continually dismissed as ill-mannered, inept, and a bad influence. However, the force of his music and image signaled the mainstream culture it was time for a change. Entering the 5th grade, Presley was asked by his teacher, Oleta Grimes, to enter a talent contest on the Children's Day at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show. At the age of 10, outfitted in a cowboy suit and standing on a chair to reach the microphone, Presley's rendition of Red Foley's Old Shep won 2nd place, a $5 prize, and a free ticket to all the rides. On his birthday the following January, he received a guitar purchase from Tupelo hardware store. Over the next year, Vernon Presley, his dad, allowed his brother Johnny Smith and Assembly of God preacher Frank Smith to give him basic guitar lessons. The day after his graduation from high school, he took a job at Parker Machinist Shop. By June, he was working at the Precision Tool Company and then drove truck for Crown Electric. After a short time in the stockroom, he is promoted to truck driving and begins to wear his long hair in a pompadour style, which was the current truck driver hairstyle at the time. That summer, he recorded My Happiness, and That's When the Heartaches Began at Memphis Recording Studios, a sideline Sam Phillips had started at his Sun Records studio, where anyone could record a 10-inch acetate for $4.
Walking through a party in the county jail. The prison band was there and they began to wail. The band was jumping and the joint began to swing. You should have heard this knocked out jailbird sing. Let it rock. Everybody let it rock. Everybody in old cell block.
On that night, July 5th, 1954, a warm summer night in Memphis, Tennessee, Elvis Presley, Scotty Moore, Bill Black were recording at Sun Records Studios. Rockabilly was invented that night in Memphis. Fading from the scene by the late 1950s, rockabilly remained the purest form of rock and roll. Though it only lasted a few brief years, it provided a crucial image and rebellious spirit for rock's initial wave. Guys like Roy Orbison, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash owe their start to Sam Phillips and his Sun Records studio. Now, are there any questions? No? Well, since I give you a brief history or just a very brief look, I could go on forever and ever. Break them into small groups and research a part of this music history. I would like you to compare and contrast the different styles of music in a 5-page paper that is to be turned in to me on Friday. Thank you for listening, and let's get to work.